Anna Huthmaker with Huthmaker Violins, and this is our Students Stuck at Home video series, video number 2. So I don't know about where you live, but here our schools, the AKS, or the requirements for what they're supposed to be learning, this coming week it's all about history and careers. And so in the orchestra world, we're going to use that and talk about the history of your bow. We're going to talk about the wood that it comes from. Now, first of all, most of you students probably know there's basically 3 kinds of materials that bows are made out of: wood, fiberglass, and carbon fiber. Now, we're not going to talk about fiberglass and carbon fiber today. That's for another day. We're going to talk about wood. And there are a few other exotic woods, but for the most part, we're going to talk about the king of woods for bows. All the best bows in the world are made from a wood called Pernambuco. I know it's a weird name and everybody takes a little while to learn it. Pernambuco, P-E-R-N-A-M-B-U-C-O. And it is my hope that after this video, you understand some of the history of this amazing wood. It is now endangered, so I'm going to tell you how it happened that way. So Pernambuco actually comes from a state in Brazil that's called Pernambuco. And if you're looking at Brazil, it's the northeast coastline up where it's at its fattest. And it's right under the equator, to give you some kind of idea what it's like up there. Hot is what it's like up there. So these trees, Pernambuco trees, you'll also hear them called Brazilwood trees. They were for miles and miles and miles as far as you could see in the history of this country. The entire coastline of Pernambuco was covered with these trees. And in the 1500s, trafficking started to pick up. That might not be the right word. Trading started to pick up between France and Brazil and Portugal and Brazil. You started getting more and more ships going back and forth. Now, and this is where it gets really interesting because there's a lot of different stories out there. I can tell you that the first story I ever heard was that when the ships started coming from France and landing on the coastline, they started trading with the locals. But when they would empty their ships out, the ships would sit too high up in the water. They needed ballast. They needed something that would sink them down a little bit to make them stable for the trip back home to France. So they would cut down all these trees, throw them in the bottom of the boat, and go home. Well, at a certain point, they looked down at the bottom of the boat. You know, all those boats leak. And it was full of water. And the water was like this dark, rich purple. Now, you have to think back. So we're talking the early 1500s. So you can't just go down to the grocery store and buy a RIT dye. You know, the dyes that they had were plant-based. And all of a sudden, they found something that would make cloth rich and purple. So what is special about purple? Well, purple is the color of royalty. Well, now all of a sudden, cha-ching, cha-ching, we're talking big money gets involved because now we have something we can sell to kings and queens and make a fortune off of. That's one of the stories. Another really cool story I heard was that some of the sailors were making bonfires on the beach, and they made a soap of the ashes from the fire and lye, and they dyed their they washed their clothes in there, and then when they pulled them out, the clothes were a dark red. And that's how they learned that these trees are actually a dye wood. So it's kind of cool. So like if you look at this, I just put a little bit of Pernambuco dust in some hot water. Now this is kind of a burnt orange color. That's like a good Brazil wood. This is like what so many of our bows are made of today. But the really great bows, the fine old French and English bows, if I were to grind up that wood and put it in hot water, it'd be dark purple. So I thought that was kind of cool to show you what actually happens. I will also give you a little hint. It's kind of neat. As a bow maker, when you're working with this and you're constantly creating sawdust, you will dye your hands the color of the wood. So if you're ever in the grocery store and you look over and the man or woman next to you has dark purple thumbs, they're a bow maker. You should ask them what their name is and introduce yourself. So we get our wood from Brazil. This is Pernambuco. I'm going to say it over and over because it's a really important word. And these days, like I said, Pernambuco is endangered. So back in the 1500s and the 1600s, when things started getting really hot and heavy when it came to the Pernambuco trees, they just started decimating the forests. And I hear all kind of interesting stories that pirates got involved, and they're not cute Johnny Depp pirates. They were like really bad people, and that the history of the Pernambuco wood is really bloody and a lot of people died for it. So as a result though, they chopped down all the trees for dyewood, but we like the trees for bow wood. Pernambuco is the perfect wood in terms of strength and elasticity for a bow. We need it to bend and flex, but we need it to be strong. So the best bows, again, made from Pernambuco. So I hope that this helps you learn some things. So I'm gonna give you some extra credit. So the first thing I want you to do for your extra credit is, I want you to go Google IPCI. It stands for the International Pernambuco Conservation Initiative. And it's really cool. All these bow makers and luthiers and violinists got together and decided it was time to save Pernambuco. And so this organization is reforesting and planting like crazy, and they have been for a while now. Little extra credit. I have lots of gorgeous Pernambuco bows. These are from the Hill workshop in England. And Hill had tons of really great bow makers that made bows for them. So go Google Hill bows. You will learn so much. And some of these bows are the ones we dream about owning someday. So my hope for you is that at some point you will end up owning a Pernambuco bow. In the meantime, if you have any questions about Pernambuco or the history of the wood, you can call me at Huthmaker Violins, because I can talk about this stuff all day long. Thank you for listening. Tomorrow, I think we're going to talk about bow hair. Have a great day, y'all.